at whatever it is that you're doing. So every single time that you are able to consult from somebody who has gone ahead of you, or somebody who already is in the business, basically a consultant, it's very good, and it's going to be helpful for you as an entrepreneur. And it's actually very, very advised that you take time to also listen to people who actually have gone ahead of you, or ahead of your time. It may not necessarily be someone who's older than you. It actually may be someone who's younger than you, but they have more experience, they have more knowledge in that particular business. So it is just but right that you take time and learn and listen, to what they have to say. So of course, getting a quick, brief of what you should be expecting, at least from here on Behind the Markets this morning on Money FM. We look at income allocation and how much of your income should you allocate where. Most of the time we spend on what we feel like is right and important in what particular time, and what feels like is needed. And this all trickles down to issues of priorities. What should come first, what is needed, and what is wanted. And as you know, when it comes to money issues, we just spend based on feelings. And if you feel that is what's most itching for you, you are likely to spend on that. And if you feel that's more exciting for you, definitely you're going to spend first on that, despite looking at issues of maybe you have renters on your hands, you have issues like food in your house, food items haven't been attended to yet, but you feel, I think I need to buy myself a new suit or a new iPhone 13 Pro Max. I think that is more of an importance to me. Misappropriating funds. This is what we're always nagging about and raving on social media. When the government, when you feel the government is spending on something you feel should not be spent on, and we go like, this is misappropriation of funds. And this, of course, is what we want to deal with, and go in depth with you regarding allocation of income. Your monies, when you get paid or when you make some money, what do you do with the money, and where do you put your monies at? Do you keep, do you invest? What happens to the money, of course, when everything else, when you have the monies in your hands at that particular time? So we're likely to go for a news break at the hour 18 at 60 as the bulletin coming your way. But of course, that of course is a quick background of the topic we're to have on income allocation, that is Behind the Markets program that comes to you every single day from Monday all the way to Friday. So the importance, of course, of this particular element when it comes to finances is generally income to financial planning for your business is the budgeting. If you're able to sit and budget, chances are high you're likely to spend on the essentials and not what's just there to be spent on. There's a whole difference. The fact that you're spending doesn't mean that you're spending on the right thing, and hence you need to take time and understand which one has to come first and the next, and things like that. So basically, those are the things that of course we are yet to delve into. Of course, Mutwale is yet to join us as a co-host, as we also look at more various financial matters right on this very segment, Behind the Markets. The time is only 8 on the dot, and the weather of course is about 19 degrees Celsius, mostly sunny around the parts of the country, and especially Lusaka. Now that of course it's we're the day getting warmer, we hope that of course it doesn't get too hot, but only by the predicted temperatures, and of course most likely to drop to about 17 degrees Celsius, of course, as reported. But of course, still around the matter, you're looking at being able to give yourself critical insight into how you can do business, and also how basically you can increase your cash flow in also expenses, cutting on expenses. So these are some of the things that a lot of people we fail to take time and plan for, and hence we find ourselves in credit when you actually had enough money to clear most of the debt, if you had any debt at all, most of the expenses that you had, monthly bills, water bills, electricity bills, transport, and things like that. You had enough money when what the time you got paid, but because you did not take time to really plan, hence you found yourself having bought unnecessary things, and you actually got yourself into I don't really understand how people will have the courage to borrow money and borrow money and borrow until you have bills all over your neck. I don't know where people get the courage, really. I'm one person who hates debt. I would rather I do not eat a meal a day, but I'm not owing anybody no nothing. That way I'm more comfortable. I do not like that. In Congo, the scene is gone that I can walk from town to home every day, but I know I'm not owing 1 hour more to coin. That's way better for me as compared to let me get on a Yango, let me get on a bus. When I know this money I'm putting myself in more debt and in Congole. I dislike that. I don't know your strategy of paying back on Congole if it's effective, but I try to avoid in Congole at all times as much as I can. That way I know most of the monies I'm not paying back anyone. I'm actually putting that money into investment or for my own use, basically, in that particular regard. But imagine you have credit of about 5,000 and you get paid 4,000. That 1,000 is likely to end on you moving from home to work, and from work to home, and probably just a bit on food. You won't even have enough food to last you for the rest of a month. So chances are high you're likely to borrow again in the next few couple of days in that particular month. And so all you're doing is, servicing your continuous debt. Every month you are giving someone back money. Every month you're owing somebody and you just need to pay them once you get paid, which in the long run, collectively, you find that you haven't really done much for yourself. All you've been doing is paying rent, buying little food for yourself in the house, and you are paying people more debt, more Congole, which is really not helping you. And if you really realize those monies that you borrow, or some of the things that you buy when you borrow money, nothing really for you to say, okay, I think I actually bought, something to sustain me, something to bring me more money on my table. Remember, we're looking at where important to allocate the money or your income, and how to grow your income. So if you borrow money and spend it on something that is not bringing you money, then you are just, crippling yourself at the end of the day financially, because you are not helping yourself grow in any way. The only thing you're doing is actually sustaining yourself in the in the short term, and not in the long term. So if you're able to save and be able to invest later on, that way you are looking at a whole long term process of you being financially stable and sustainable through the activities that, of course, that you indulge yourself into, or where you spend the monies at. So ideally, if you're running a business or you're a business owner, um, some of the things that a lot of people seem to come in contact with or seem to encounter is misinformation of the current accountant and miscalculation of tax allocation. Excuse me. Now, I'm not sure how well you're acquainted when it comes to add to taxes. I want to believe a lot of businesses, especially small, growing, mushrooming businesses, will rarely pay tax, apart from, say, council, where you're operating from, issues of electricity bills, water bills, maybe, for those who are maybe mandatory, where you're told you cannot operate here until you pay your rental and your bill, water bills and your electricity bill, then maybe you can pay for those things. But mostly, it is rare that you'd find small businesses, paying for issues like tax, which I want are very few, actually, and that is why, you have, institutions like, the Zambia Revenue Authority. You have also PACRA, back and forth, trying to get to you, trying to help you understand how these things work, because it helps. In a way, it helps that you pay your taxes. Maybe as you go on in the business, as it grows, make sure that you look into that particular matter of, paying your taxes. It really helps at the end of the day. So understanding tax allocation as well, means that you know how much you need to pay. These things of closures, being shut down because you haven't paid your returns, it's not okay. As a business, you need to look into that. So make sure that you also spend time and look at that. So why do you need to know about budget percentage allocation? All right. A lot of us feel, well, so long as I have money and my priority is to start a business, so my focus is on, growing the business, or maybe, basically investing into the business. There's more actually involved when it comes to, growing and allocating, your income. Like Munyumba earlier said in, Ask the Expert program right here on Money FM, he was mentioning, saying, It's not about how much you start with. It's not about how much you earn. You can literally actually start, your investment and your capital from just the little that you earn. It might not be as much in your eyes, but actually is more than enough for, capital, in that regard. So as well as, making sure you don't, end up with any nasty shocks coming to tax season, understanding that, you also assign your budget percentages will also help you to see that you can also cut on cost. This also needed. You increase your speed in certain areas. Now, you're looking at where you can spend your income. Some people will continuously feed their businesses. At the end of the day, you realize that you are not growing the business as much as you feed in more capital. Remember, a business is supposed to also yield results and returns. So the moment that it is not bringing you as many returns, then it becomes problematic and pointless for you to keep on feeding in your salary or your income in the same business as capital. And at the end of it, you actually advise that you do slow down on the continuous investment into the business, because you're not making any returns. The business is supposed to, well, as there are risks, possible risks in a business, there are also chances of you making profit depending on how you play your cards. So if you're not making those many returns, as much returns as possible, then you're just, you keep on investing. You cannot tell if the business is growing or not, if it's making returns or not, because all you're doing is feeding into the business external, channels of money when it is supposed to be growing itself. That is the reason and purpose for capital. So if you can notice and grow on the capital, it actually even makes it better for you, because in that regard you have a channel and you understand the business whether you're making losses or not. That is why you need understanding how much you're making, understanding how much of a loss you're making at the end of the day in a business, and that you used to you know there as your investment in a business, and that is why you need to look at issues like that. So of course, you're still tuned into Money program that actually comes to you every single day from Monday all the way to Friday on Money FM, and the frequency is 93.7 FM. In case you're just tuning in, we're talking about money and financial issues. Basically, it may be on a business level, it might be an entrepreneur, individual. It all borders across all of those things. So make sure that you take time and just basically see to it that you follow the conversation as we delve more into that particular aspect. Of course, more topics are yet to be attached here and there, as more is being unveiled on this very segment on behind the markets with Mutwale. Now, of course, looking at some of the things that actually have been already touched on and 10 on Money FM. Remember that we're also live on social media, Facebook, Twitter, as well as Instagram. And of course, you can still follow and join the conversation on our website. That is www.moneyfmzambia.com. And just like that, of course, we'll be more than happy to know that you are following the conversation right here as we do more, with financial matters right on this very aspect. Now, of course, we did, kickstart the conversation regarding issues of, income allocation, and just to in the income accounts is also to basically return from the concept of entrepreneur income to the concept of primary income, and therefore contains elements of primary income not included in the entrepreneur income account. All right. So basically, in the case of corporations, distributed dividends and reinvested earnings on direct foreign investment, these are basically similar issues that you need to tackle if you're going to talk about allocation of your income, and also how basically you're yet to grow your business in that particular regard. And more, of course, to be tackled right here on Money FM this morning, as we get, of course, to just basically look at more regarding financial issues. So in case you're just joining us, the number that, of course, you can call or give us your comments or contributions will be 077 1616290. 077 1616290 right here on Money FM. The time is only 8:12, and we will be, of course, on this particular stretch for the next couple of hours up until the hour of 8:45. We'll also get to delve into another particular program right here on Money FM. So, of course, just to give you a bit more insight on income allocation right here on Money FM, still on Behind the Markets. Remember that on Behind the Markets, we keep you abreast with what's happening, behind the markets, and what you should know, what you should expect commodities to be, pricing at, and issues of export and import matters. So if you're into a business, right, you need to also look at, percentages of how much you're investing in the business. Obviously, a business budget and their categories aren't identical across the board. However, of course, you're likely to have an idea of a structure to follow. And if not, well, it's okay to get help, to plan for a long term rather than going for month to month. That is not very sustainable. And, being able to draw a line on how much you'll be investing on a monthly basis that is supposed to last your business, to keep your business afloat at least for a space of 6 months, say 12 months at least. You're looking at a whole time that's going to accord your business the growth that it needs, and also accord yourself some time to basically look at other aspects that have to be grown, or to be fed for the business to grow and operate effectively at the end of the day. Looking at maybe fixed costs aside from salaries, which of course we might take a look at later. You need to think about how much you're spending on rent, bills as well. Sometimes you find that the business is unable to pay for the rent, for its bills. Then you need to reconsider and restructure a few things here and there. If you're unable to, of course, basically pay for your rent, it becomes a challenge for the business. That means something is not being done somewhere correctly. And hence, take time and learn more about the business and how best you can, alleviate some of these aspects that are not performing quite well, because you might be feeding the business wrongly. You might be putting in as much money, but that might actually be a wrong move. In view of you trying to keep the business afloat and grow the capital by continuous investment of your salary or your income, it wrongly at the end of it. So make sure that you understand. Make sure that you understand how you are rent and how, of course, you can get back to track. Because, of course, when starting, it's okay that you can cover the rent, the bills for like 2 or 3 months. After that, the business should be able to stand by itself, and actually, it also gives you time yourself. When you cover costs or expenses for at least 3 months, that means the business doesn't have to worry about rentals and electricity bill and water bills and maybe security deposits and whatnot for at least a space of 90 days or more. And you only focus on growing and understanding the business more, understanding how it operates, and seeing how best also you can improve how the business operates in that regard. And so if you still notice that you're unable to pay basic costs for the business to run, issues of transport, rent, water, electricity bills, and whatnot, then of course you just need to get back to the drawing board. And like we stated earlier as we started, it is not wrong for you to consult. There are a lot of business consultants around the country and across the country, even already people in the very same business. It's okay to take time and just ask them and see what they can, of course, help you with, in seeing that you can run your business, at a lower cost, but still be able to thrive and stay afloat in the business and still make
much profit. Ideally,
as much profit.
The concept of
Ideally,
the business is that you grow
the
your
concept
money.
of a business is
You
that
make
you
more
grow
money out of whatever
more money out of whatever it is that
at the end
you
of the day.
put in.
Capital,
At the end of
bring
the
you
day,
more
capital,
returns and
bring you
whatnot.
more
And at
returns
the
and
end of the day,
whatnot. And at the end of the day,
more at the end of the day. Good
Good
morning,
morning.
Mutwale. How are you doing today?
Good morning,
Mutwale,
Vernon.
how are you
Thank you
doing?
very much for holding the ship down. And I don't know if we're just getting a little bit of feedback now. But I think for the purpose of this, we are here on the first session of Tuesday, where we are actually going to be going through a little bit of finance data and finance information today. And today, obviously, it being Treasury Tuesday, that's where we will be touching on we'll be touching on, and it's not just for Treasury Tuesday. This week, going into next week as well, we'll be going through something I call the financial matrix. This is where everyone gets their financial planning and everything down to it. So thank you very much for everyone who's joining us. But let's touch on a few things, Vernon, before we get started in today, catching up on some of the major stories. Obviously, the main story that is dominating the headlines is got to do with our situation, our energy situation, our energy deficiency as a country, our electricity deficiency. It's dominating most of the president's time, dominating most of our finance ministry's time, dominating most of our sectors right now, because it affects the operations of the whole economy. So let's touch on one of the things that we should be looking at. Yesterday, the president actually made a statement regarding laws that need to be changed. And he did say, and I quote at the end, "We shall look into any laws that are impeding investment in the energy sector or the electricity sector, or we shall look into any laws that are impeding innovation." Now, one of the key things, I'm going to follow also a statement that he made on energy independence or off-the-grid solutions, because one of the big things that's actually causing most of this load shedding is that the fact that we have grown our domestic sector faster than we've ever seen. Our domestic sector has gone from 100,000 homes over the last decade to over 1 million homes now in the last decade, and that's picked up pace very quickly. Now, obviously, every single time I always tell people, every single time you drive past Civic Center or during the week, or you go past a church during the weekend, and you see a married couple coming together, just recognize that's a new energy consumer that's getting onto the market. That's a new energy consumer that's about to now start thriving on the market and calling for demand for stoves, for blenders, whatever it is. That married couple is about to start consuming more electricity, and they're going to probably bring in a child into this world who's going to start consuming even more electricity. So just know that family formation and middle-class growth have been the driving force behind the deficit. Energy demand or electricity demand has been going up by 4% a year since 2010, while supply, 6% a year since 2010, while supply growth has been 4%. The reality is that energy demand growth has been outpacing supply growth. So that's what's causing all of this. There's a lot of data behind this, but really the reality is the domestic sector has been the fastest growing sector when it comes to electricity demand. So one of the best things I think we need to start looking at as a country, one of the fastest ways to get through load shedding and to get out of it is to look at the root cause of it. Because one of the biggest problems everyone keeps doing is we keep trying to build new power stations, but we're not looking at the growing demand. That's where the problem is coming from. How do we curtail the growing demand without impeding the economic growth? And the growing demand is coming, the fastest growing section, as I said, is the domestic sector of electricity. So what we should be looking at as a country in terms of moving away from demand is to get households different solutions, because evidently our grid is not built to handle a mining sector, an export sector, and a household sector. It's not meant for these three things. So we have to move away from this. We have to move the households away and give them a different solution. And that's why I've been talking a lot about energy independence. If we can get energy independence, then our economic wheels can keep turning. Because right now, one of the biggest causes I've seen when it comes to the load shedding situation is that when the GDP of this country passes 5% a year, and we did so in Q3 last year, when GDP passes 5%, load shedding is not far away. So the economic activity is causing the consumption of water at a faster pace. Climate change, all those things, wonderful, convenient solutions. And Vernon, do you know why? Let me give it to you this way, Vernon. Do you know why ZESCO always has to pretend they didn't see the water going down?
Why is that?
Well, it's simply because if you read the Electricity Act, and I'm going to read this for you. This is a section of the Electricity Act that actually says to you why ZESCO cannot act like they actually knew this. They can't see it. Section 9 of the Electricity Act reads this 1995 Electricity Act, which actually governs any electricity supplier in this country, including ZESCO. Okay, and this is the law that reads. Section 9 reads, except for causes beyond the control of the operator of an undertaking and subject to any regulation made under this act, no operator, I'm going to repeat that, no operator shall lessen or discontinue the supply of electricity stipulated in any contract of supply, unless the consumer has failed to pay their charges, or the consumer has failed to comply with conditions of supply, or regulations have failed to remedy the default within 7 days of receiving a registered post of operator undertaking and a notice calling for the consumer to do so. You see what that says? It actually means where ZESCO can foresee a problem, load shedding is actually illegal. That's the reality. So the reason why they always have to pretend like they're surprised, like they don't have guys who can actually see the water levels dropping, is simply because it's actually illegal for them to load shed or to lessen the electricity supply in a situation where they had control over it. So this is actually the Electricity Act of Zambia 1995, which actually prohibits the things they do. So they always have to look like, oh, where did this come from? That's what they always have to look like. So we're always going to get this situation, and load shedding is a very convenient thing. Now let's take a look at the economics of load shedding, because we always look at it from the emotional and painful side of it. Let's take a look at the economics of load shedding. What's happened in the last 3 months also? You always see something also happen that also drives people to start load shedding. You know what you'll see, Vernon? You're going to see the exchange rate of this country going up. Now, remember, when ZESCO buys power from these independent power producers and they sell power abroad, what currency do they sell it in, and do they buy it in US dollars? Don't buy that stuff in kwacha. They buy it in US dollars. So when the kwacha gets weaker, it becomes less profitable to sell domestically and more profitable to sell internationally. Okay, that's the reality. So export becomes more profitable because the IPPs, the independent power producers locally, are charging probably about 10 or so cents per unit. And they have to now front that to somebody who will pay an even higher cost. Who is the only customer, Vernon, who will pay a higher cost when the Zambian kwacha is getting weaker? The export clients. So what is the most convenient thing to clean up the books of ZESCO? Load shed the country and export the electricity. That's what we're going through right now. So when you see your currency getting weaker, just also know, when you see your economy grow past 5% and your kwacha gets weaker, load shedding is coming around the mountain. Okay? Because that's what works for ZESCO. This is the reality. So it appears that the Zambian people and ZESCO cannot get along, because what ZESCO first always tries to do when the kwacha is getting weaker is they start to try and push for a tariff revision. We, the people, say, what's this? We don't want a tariff revision. Then they conveniently take their eyes off the Kariba, pretending they don't have eyes and they don't have the ability to see it. And then what do? They say, the water levels have dropped. Sorry, people. We need to cut power. But ironically, they'll say, no, we can't cut power for the other countries because they have punitive export contract terms. If we cut power, there'll be all sorts of things. But to you, the citizens, it's easy for us to cut power. Does that make sense to you, Ven? How does that now sound like a logical reason as to why we've gotten here?
Interestingly, you see, the funny thing is that, like earlier we talked about, we actually had time to talk to the corporate affairs manager. And what we were given was, load shedding has always been there, and it's not the first time we Zambians have experienced it. So they're trying to tell us that we have lived with these things and it should be normal, especially when we are told that we're going to experiencing it. We're actually going to experience it. So that is something that we should not be surprised with. But then seeing the level at which we have developed as a country and things that we have achieved technologically, I doubt if that is where we should be standing today as a country with 50 plus years of existence and development, still experiencing load shedding for as long as 12 hours as a country.
Look, I always tell you this, Vernon. Businesses are business. They have to tell you what they need to tell you so that you can believe it. Sorry, if you can just unmute yourself. Sorry about that, Vernon. But I'm just saying that businesses are business. Listen, they'll always find a way to tell you that no, this is something we've lived with and so forth. It is not something we should be getting used to. Do you know that the average German, do you know how much power outage? Germany is the best country when it comes to power. And they'll say, no, it's because it's a developed country, whatever, fine. But do you know, can I just take a guess? How much time do you think the average German person experiences in power outages per year?
Per year?
I'm thinking less than 24 hours.
Try 15 minutes.
15 minutes.
15 minutes.
That's what the average German experiences in total outages, including power outages, and they experience 15 minutes of total outages. That's what that tells you. So I'm just giving you the proper ins and outs of the situation here, that when it comes to this load shedding thing, we're given a lot of excuses. This is why I'm going to say the actual solution to this country and the failures that we've had in electricity should actually be a sign that the people of this country need to move off the grid. We all need to find different solutions, the same way we've done with the water situation. Water is poorly provided by the water and sanitation companies. They have failed to provide water to most of the domestic sector. So everyone has resorted to drilling boreholes. That's what happens. Everyone opens a well or drills a borehole and they sort it out themselves. So when you have the power to do so, so let's talk more about power production. So I've talked about the growth of the households. We need to start looking at the borehole solution. So what are the solutions that we should be talking about in terms of the laws that we need to amend, the regulations we need to change, and the innovations we need to introduce? The first one, obviously, that everyone talks about is home solar, to be able to power your house. Or the first thing I'll tell you is the first thing we have to do, Vernon, in order to actually get past all of this, is get the biggest chunks of household energy consumption off the grid. Number one, there's 50% of a household bill is made up of cooking and water heating. Those are the two biggest consumers of electricity. So you need to get as many people onto gas stoves in this country in the quickest space of time. Do you know, Vernon, I've done the math, okay? Do you know that it is actually cheaper for the government to just buy gas stoves and cylinders and give them to people than it is to build a power station, yet 7 times more effective for demand management? 7 times more effective.
Yeah, it should be.
If you actually give the people of this, if you just go, because I'll tell you which countries have done this. Botswana and South Africa, they did this. Botswana in the 90s, I remember when we were moving there, my mother was telling me about it. She was like, look, when we were moving to Botswana, they actually gave you a voucher. They would say, bring your electric stove. We will give you a voucher for 50% off. And you'll go to any of these cash bazaar anywhere, and you will pick up a gas stove and a 10 kg cylinder. You were able to do that, and you were able to pay 50% of the price. The Botswana government did that for its citizens, because they said, instead of building a power station, why don't we just remove the demand that's causing us to build a power station, and then start to and then change these people from using electric stoves to gas stoves. You know that the South African government did the same thing as well, because 61% of households in South Africa use gas stoves. How do they do it? In 2005 and 2006, the South African government offered people a free gas stove, a free 5 kg cylinder, and 3 free refills for that thing. They started with 100,000 homes in Cape Town, and then they managed to extend the process around the country over the next year. And now you found that due to the increased tariffs plus the free gas stove giveaway, most South Africans now use gas. So I always ask this question as people, instead of building new power stations, why don't we just change the behavior of the people by just giving them gas stoves, which is the equivalent of building a power station? And that makes sense?
Absolutely.
It's exactly.
But then I'm thinking, why are we stuck at this point if we have alternatives as brilliant as those? Is it that the government, is accustomed to aware of doing things, and people now actually following suit? If we don't have ZESCO generate power, then we're all stuck as a country.
It's bureaucracy and old school thinking. We need to think outside the box. to fix this situation, we actually start learning to think outside the box. And thinking outside the box is simple things like that. I've actually given 8 prescriptions. I'm going to read 8 prescriptions that I believe can actually change the circumstance. So effectively, I've said building, changing changing everyone to cooking with gas. There was actually a campaign in South Africa called Now You're Cooking with Gas. And they even had a theme song for it, everything to get everyone to switch. So these are things that you can do now. Okay, these are actual things that you can do now. And yes, people say the price of gas may go up. The price of gas might momentarily go up, but this is something that we can actually deal with as a country. You can even start producing gas from coal. You can produce it from natural energy. So there are many alternatives that we can try and use. But the problem is we're stuck with a simple way of thinking as people, and we get stuck trying to fix things the old school way, as opposed to trying to do this. But here are 8 prescriptions I'm going to read for you before I get into today's talk about the financial matrix. Here are 8 prescriptions. The first one is giving out gas stoves. That's the first prescription I'll tell everyone. Give out gas stoves. Just go. It's the same as building a power station. Just go and find. Zesco can go and do a deal with whoever produces gas stoves around this world and get cheap gas stoves. Okay, you've got companies, Afrox, all these people already produce gas. Those are partially government-owned companies, by the way. So you actually have already got distributors in the market who can do this, who can support the gas industry. You've actually got very strong gas companies. So if you can take cooking off, cooking, by my estimates, Vernon, households consume 40% of the grid. Cooking consumes 25% of the household. By virtue of this, 8% of the grid can be freed up by just switching all cooking, all electric-based cooking to gas. Okay, that's already 8%. 8% of the grid, Vernon, is about a 230 or 300 megawatt power station. 300 megawatt power station. You know how much it'll cost us to build a 300 megawatt power station? $900 million by the estimates. About $3 million per megawatt. That's what it costs us to build a power station. So does it cost $900 million to give every household in Zambia a free gas stove? Guess what, Vernon? It does not. It does not. You know how much it costs to get all 100 households on gas stoves? $200 million. Okay, so for a quarter of the price of building a 300 megawatt power station, you can just give every household a gas stove. Isn't that saving money?
Absolutely.
So why aren't we thinking like that? This is the problem I have. These are simple things, but the things is like we don't like innovating. Other things we can do as a country is to start to introduce things like synthetic gas. Or the second thing I would do, Vernon, if it was me in that situation, I would then pass a law giving a tax incentive, because what's the number one way an electric stove enters the house? What's the number one way, Vernon?
We're looking at an electric appliance, and definitely you still need electricity.
But how do most women acquire electric stoves?
Most
women acquire electric stoves.
Don't probably
you have a vehicle.
buy, drive it to
You
home.
may think so. But if you go into households, you know what you find? I got this at my kitchen party. I got this at my kitchen party. I got this at my kitchen. I'm telling you, these electric stoves are actually getting in through the weddings. Okay? So wedding is a new electric stove getting into a house. So here's what I would do. I would incentivize wedding registries. Okay? These wedding registries that women have when they're getting married, by saying if you have an electric stove in that wedding registry instead of a gas stove for the bride, then everything should have an 8% VAT as opposed to a 16% VAT. Cutting the VAT in half, incentivizing the women of this country to give brides gas stoves instead of giving them electric stoves. See, I'm being practical here. Okay? I'm actually being practical here. I'll give a 33% discount on land rates and rental tax to landlords who install gas and solar geysers instead of electric geysers. Because if you can get the geysers and the stoves, that's 50% of household demand. That is the same as building about a 600 megawatt power station just to try and deal with households. Already, just these incentives can change behavior. And also now start looking at provisions of solar kits. Now, the next problem we're dealing with the households, Vernon, is the sockets. Okay, because we have to strategically go after them. So we've gone after the cooking utensils. We've now gone after the water heating. We said solar geysers. We've said solar and gas geysers will incentivize the landlords with lower land rates and lower taxes for income. We talked about trying to make sure we introduce the gas stove by even just either giving them out or making sure that you reduce the taxes for people who are able to do it. So these are incentives you can give out. The other thing we can also consider doing as a country is also making sure that we provide solar kits for people, or at least alternative socket kits for households. So if you want to power your house using a battery kit and everything, that costs you about 60,000. So we need to start a financing plan or a loan guarantee scheme as a country to give people that. If you can give them a single digit loan, like if you tell someone, Vernon, look, here's a 5-year loan for you to be able to transition your sockets in your house to be able to be solar and battery powered, so that you're actually able to store the energy and transition it into your sockets. For a 60,000 kwacha loan, we'll give this to you at an interest rate of 8% because there's a government guarantee behind it. These are the things that we can start to do alongside trying to build new power stations. Introduce, obviously, synthetic gas. Synthetic gas is actually a very interesting form of gas that you can make from coal, and you can make it from solid waste, which actually has got systems that you can use to power a house. So there's a device you can use to power. So the same way, I don't know if you've seen that gas canister for cooking. Now you can actually connect that to a device, and that thing can generate electricity at your house. So therefore, you can power your sockets, and it's equivalent to paying your ZESCO bill. So it's just about now transitioning people to synthetic gas, cooking gas, gas for water heating, or switching to solar. But we need to finance the people to be able to do that. And if we can do that off the grid solution, people make up 40% of the grid demand. Okay, so the domestic sector is making up about 40% of the grid demand. And then what we can do from that point onwards, one of the bigger policies I also would like to see is what can we do to incentivize the mining companies who consume 55% of the grid to only start getting licenses, especially the multinational mining companies, to start getting licenses based on the fact that they must build their own power station.
Now, I appreciate the fact that you brought in the aspect of changing the mindset of the people and not maybe the utility company or the utility firm. Looking at some of this information, vital and really can help us reduce on the seems to be quite overwhelmed with is how well people tend to look at this information, because we Zambians seem to only be able to tuned into a particular solution or alternative only when we are in a drastic situation, like say we don't have power for say 12 hours, and what else can you do to sustain your business, for you to sustain your homes with electricity, or to sustain yourself with power? Then we tend to look out for solutions and alternatives. At this particular point, I don't know, how do you feel? Maybe we can reach out to people and be able to share this information, apart from, of course, this particular medium of radio. I feel some actually would be for the idea if they were shared with the information.
Well, look, unfortunately, it first has to come with sensitization. And we do have a response here from one of our listeners here. We've got a lot of people saying good morning here. We do have a response from a listener who's actually asked the question. Doreen Tembatembo has said, good morning from Charleston. I feel it's not possible for this government to give out free gas stoves to the people. LOL. Look, Doreen, I think anyone can give out gas stoves, but I'm just saying, yes, it's an idea, and I hope that we can start to think outside the box a little bit, because Thabo Mbeki showed that it can be done. But yeah, I understand the hesitancy people have when it comes to this administration. But look, I'll tell you one thing: this administration is proving to try and listen. They have responded. I'll give the president this. Okay, I'll give him this. Our last occupant of that office, when we had load shedding, disappeared for 3 months. He just vanished. We didn't see him. We didn't hear from him. We even asking, where is our president? We kept on using. I remember I was sitting there with my wife. I said, where's our president in all of this? Where's he gone? So this one has actually taken the bullets. He's stepped up and he's taken the hits. Whether he's handled it correctly, that's a different story. But he stepped up and he's taken the hits. I hope, and they are saying that this time, let's do a lasting solution. And that's why, Vernon, I'm talking about doing things like transitioning the cooking solutions of homes, doing things like transitioning the heating solutions of homes, changing the culture of the way we do things in our households in terms of energy, okay? Because energy is a culture. So if we can do that, those are lasting solutions. Those are ways of changing things and doing reforms that incentivize different behavior. That's really what I think we should be aiming at while we build up. And you know why I say this is a much better solution? If we incentivize more people to get off the grid and encourage them to get off the grid, my view in all of this will be that once we've done that, as we're building new power stations, we will have more. Because here's my biggest concern, Vernon, which nobody's pointing at. The government's goal with mining is to get mining all to 3 million metric tons. Okay. Right now, we're not even at 1 million. We're about 800,000. We want to quadruple our current output of copper. That's what we want to do as a country. We want to quadruple our output of copper. How will we do that without vacuuming up all the electricity? Already, just with these 800,000 tons, mines are consuming 55% of the current grid. Even if you increase the water capacity all the way, okay, and you invest in everything, mines, just by getting to that 3 million, will consume the whole new grid. So we're going to have load shedding again if we continue to grow our mining sector the way that we plan on doing it. It'll be even worse. So why don't we start looking at transitioning the people off the grid to give it room for mining expansion and export so that the people can power themselves? Because we're the nuisance to the politicians. We're the ones who are making noise about this load shedding. We're the ones who are upset. Okay, so if we were able to power ourselves, because look, the water utility companies have not been able to provide electricity for months, people, not even for months, for years. Ever since I come back to Zambia, I have never seen a water company provide water. Okay, I've never. Everyone has their own boreholes. That's what I've been seeing. So the fact that people have their own boreholes, they're not even concerned that the water companies have not been able to provide. There are some areas in Zambia where there are pipes, but nothing has ever come through those pipes for years. Okay, that's a reality. But people are okay because they've been empowered with a solution to provide water for themselves. So if we can do the same with electricity, off-the-grid solutions will be the best way to help the people of this country become much more comfortable with the fact that a lot of electricity is going to go to the mining sector. So this is a conversation I want us to have because it affects economic growth. One of the main things about electricity is that it becomes the hindrance of economic growth and it has inflationary pressure. If we've got too much load shedding, businesses start laying people off, businesses stop growing, and because they're having less capacity utilization, they start increasing their prices. So that's another thing that we need to look at. So in these final dying moments, Vernon, I want to introduce a concept. Before we close off here today, I want to introduce a concept called the financial matrix, and I want as many people to be able to tune into it. Over this next week, I'm going into next week, I'm going to be taking people through 5 sectors of their financial planning by age, Vernon. Would you like to know where you're supposed to be by age, Vernon?
Absolutely.
I'll be able to take you through where you're supposed to be in terms of financial planning, which looks at your cash flow, your risk management, debt, tax, and estate planning. Okay. As you're doing your plans for this year, I want you to know where you're supposed to be by age, and I'll be looking at it by decade: your 20s, your 30s, your 40s, and your 50s. I'll also be looking through investment planning. Where, Vernon, what should your themes of investment be? How much should you have in a portfolio? Where should you be investing your time by each decade? Where should you be investing your money? What are the kinds of investments to avoid? And what kind of investment behaviors should you not look at? Should you just say, okay, enough is enough, I'm not into this? Or I'll also be looking, Vernon, at your wealth. Where should you be in terms of wealth? By what we call the wealth matrix by age. What are the 5 main levels of wealth we should be looking at? for you by each decade of your life. And finally, we'll be looking at your behavioral matrix, what we call what millionaire habits should you have by each decade? What risks and pitfalls should you avoid? What are the low income wealth building habits you want to build up? And what is the general financial advice theme? So we're going to be looking at your behavior, your investment, your wealth, and your total financial planning by each decade. So as many of you want to tune in. And finally, Vernon, the fifth and final one we're going to go through is marriage, my man. It's called the money and marriage matrix. That's going to look at the 5 stages of marriage: newlyweds, the 7-year itch, the stride, and the what do we call the free nesters? Those people who've now gotten to the point where their kids are even leaving their house. I'm going to take you through those phases, Vernon, and just to quickly look at it as the first one. Just quickly, wait, Vernon, I take it you're a man in your 20s, right? Young viral man in your 20s. Let me tell you where you're supposed to be in terms of your financial planning as an example to people so that they can tune in. At this point, Vernon, you're supposed to be living within 75% of your income, sticking to your 4 walls. Your 4 walls are housing, food, transportation, housing, and basic clothing. You must have a budget by this time, Vernon. You shouldn't be involved in any lavish spending. Minimize your lavish spending and make sure that your memory building, in other words, the places you want to go through, all things, you're not building memories using debt, okay? No going into debt for vacations, Vernon. We don't want to hear about this. I want to see that when you're taking pictures in Siavonga, that you saved up for it, not you borrowed for it. That's what we want to be seeing. And save, you must get into the habit, Vernon, of saving first. This is what we do. Remember that, people, I am a licensed financial and investment advisor. So this is advice that I give to clients, okay, so that you're able to, and this is how we plan their lives. We also want to look, Vernon, at risks. Vernon, do you have health insurance? This is what we should be talking about. At your house and the place you stay or wherever it is, have you insured your functional property, the things that you need? Your phone, is it insured? These are the things where if they go missing, it's a problem. Vernon, do you have 2,000 kwacha emergency cash in your account? And are you building your 3 to 6 months? Don't worry, Vernon, you don't have to answer. The point is, don't worry, I'm not putting you on the spot. But the point I'm looking at is a 20-year-old young man should have these things. We should be looking at debt management. The main debts that you're probably battling right now are student loans, consumer credit, pressure for wedding debts. Those ones, if you want to get married, you're under pressure to borrow for that one. If you try to start a business, you probably got debt there. And probably if you got a car, you've got some debt piling up either from buying the car or servicing that car. That's usually the problem. And also tax planning at this time. It's simple, but really go to ZRA, learn their seminars. They've got seminars online. And finally, you want to have a basic estate. If you're going to save some money and this stuff, Vernon, you're going to need to make sure you've got a basic estate. Do you know what your NAPSA balance is? Are you tracking your NAPSA? I created the NAPSA calculator for my clients so that people are actually able to see the full value. These are the things, Vernon, that I would take you through if you were sitting in front of me to look at what we should be looking at. What are the things that we should be structuring in your life for your financial planning? You don't want to miss these next 5 days. If you want to do your financial plans, please keep tuning in every single morning to Money FM over the next 10 days, where I'm going to be going through the financial matrix by age. And I'm not going to miss a single group. Everyone from 20 to 69, I'm going to be capturing each decade for you.
All right. Thank you so much, Charlie, for having time just to take us through, of course, this particular interesting segment behind the markets today.
Thank you very much. And I will see all of you tomorrow. Vernon, it's been our first day. It's been a pleasure, brother. Cheers.
All right, so that is Mutwale, my co-host on this particular segment of Behind the Markets. Quickly drop in.